The silence was the worst part. Before the bombardment, the jungle moon of Xylos had teemed with a million chittering, buzzing lives. Now, as Commander Kaelen of the Varian Empire dragged herself over the root of a shattered spire tree, the only sounds were the drip of leaking fluids, from the trees or from her own body, she wasn't sure, and the distant, hollow thunder of orbital artillery. The air smelled of ozone, scorched cellulose, and blood. Her blood. Her silver battle armor, sleek and predatory, was compromised. A shard of crystalline shrapnel from a Kythari cluster mine was buried deep in the joint of her right thigh, and each movement sent jagged forks of lightning up her spine. Her helmet's display flickered, showing intermittent life sign readings, failing. She had been separated from her strike team when the Kythari ambush hit. She was alone. On a contested moon. Dying. Disgraceful, she thought, the word a cold stone in her gut. She was Kaelen Vor, blade of the Sapphire Sun, a warrior bred from genetic purity and hardened in 100 battles across the Orion fringe. To die not in a glorious duel, but from a slow leak in a muddy hole, was an insult to her lineage. She activated her comms bead again, static hissing in her auditory implant. No response. The Kythari jamming fields were intact. A flash of movement in the unnatural twilight. Not fauna. Too deliberate. Kaelen flattened herself against the smoldering bark, her sidearm, a needlepulse pistol, already in her hand. Her breathing stilled. A Kythari commander. Tall, even for his species, his form encased in battleplate of dark, non-reflective gray, etched with the angular, geometric lines of his people. His helmet was off, cradled under one arm, revealing a face that was starkly, classically Kythari, sharp, elegant bone structure, skin the color of twilight, hair a close-cropped silver cap. Two vertical, faintly bioluminescent scars marked his high cheekbones, ritual marks of command. He was scanning the terrain with a tactical visor, his expression one of weary focus. He, too, was injured, a deep burn scored the armor across his left shoulder, and he favored his right leg. Hatership, clean and pure, surged through Kaelen's veins, burning away the pain. Here was the enemy. The faceless horde given form. The architects of the massacre at Cygnus Gate, the butchers of the Starweaver colony. Her finger tightened on the trigger. He turned, and his eyes, a startling, calm amber, found her shadow. He didn't startle. He didn't raise his own weapon, a heavy plasma carbine slung across his back. He simply went very still, assessing. "Varian," he said, his voice a low, resonant baritone that carried through the dripping quiet. It was devoid of the sneering malice she expected. It was just a statement. "Kythari filth," she spat back, the words tasting of copper. She tried to rise, to present a final, defiant threat, but her leg buckled. Agony blinded her for a second. When her vision cleared, he had taken 3 cautious steps closer, his hands held slightly away. A faint, almost imperceptible sigh escaped him. That is the Varian way, is it not? To see only the target, never the circumstance. He gestured with his chin toward the eastern ridge. There is a seismic anomaly building. The orbital bombardment has destabilized the moon's core. This entire sector will be a lava field in 6 hours. The evacuation corridors are that way. He pointed west. My people. And yours. They are gone. We are, missed cargo. The enormity of his words settled over her. Abandoned. Left for dead by both sides. The humiliation was a hotter fire than her wound. You lie. My tactical feed is still partially functional. See for yourself. He carefully unclipped a small data slate from his belt and tossed it. It landed in the soft loam at her feet. Wary, her pistol never wavering from his chest, Kaelen bent and retrieved it. The screen showed orbital trajectories, fleet dispersals. The Varian carriers were pulling back to the system's edge. The Kythari dreadnoughts were doing the same. Xylos was being written off as a mutual loss. A tomb. The truth was a colder shock than the jungle's creeping chill. She dropped the slate. Her weapon arm trembled. "I am Commander Rylan," he said quietly. "And you?" She saw no profit in hiding it. "Commander Kaelen Vor." A flicker of recognition in those amber eyes. The sapphire blade. "Your dossier mentioned your tenacity. It failed to capture your eyes." He paused, as if surprised at his own words. "We can remain here, aiming weapons we lack the strength to fire, until the ground swallows us. Or we can attempt." "A noble sentiment," Rylan said, a thread of steel entering his voice. "And a stupid one. Your empire has left you to burn regardless. The war does not care for our hatred, Commander Kaelen. It only consumes." He turned his back on her. An unbelievable act. A provocation, or profound confidence. He began walking, limping, toward the west. "The choice is yours. Follow, or make your peace with the fire." Kaelen watched him go, her mind a storm of pride, pain, and survival instinct. The thought of dying alone, her body unmourned, her name a mere footnote in a battle report, was a deeper terror than any enemy. Cursing in her native tongue, a fluid, harsh language of clicks and vowels, she shoved her pistol into its holster and used the shattered tree to haul herself upright. Then, step by agonizing step, she began to follow the shadow of her enemy into the dying jungle. They moved in a tense, silent procession, a dozen meters apart. Kaelen watched the set of Rylan's shoulders, the efficient, limping gait. Every instinct screamed that this was a trap, that he was luring her into an ambush. Yet, he never looked back, never made a sudden move. He simply navigated the treacherous, glassy terrain created by plasma burns, occasionally stopping to consult his damaged wrist display. After 2 hours, her leg gave out completely. She crashed to her knees in a patch of luminous blue moss, a cry of pain torn from her lips before she could bite it back. This time, he turned. He stood watching her struggle for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, he walked back. He knelt before her, ignoring her flinch and the way her hand flew back to her weapon. His eyes were on the shrapnel in her thigh. "That needs to be removed. The crystal is leaching ionic energy from your biosuit. It will poison your nervous system." "Don't touch me," she hissed. "Would you prefer to die?" he asked, bluntly. He unsheathed a field medic's laser scalpel from his vambrace. Its pale blue light hummed softly. "This will hurt. But less than the crystal's progression." Their eyes locked. In his, she saw no cruelty, no sadistic pleasure. Only the pragmatic focus of a soldier dealing with a problem. It was infuriating. It was disarming. Slowly, her breath shuddering, she gave a single, sharp nod. His touch was clinical, precise. He sliced through the compromised armor plating with care. When the laser touched the edges of the crystal shard, white-hot agony seared through her. A ragged scream escaped her, and her hand shot out, gripping his armored forearm. She felt the corded muscle beneath, rigid as steel. He did not pull away. "Almost," he murmured, his voice low and focused. With a final, precise movement, he extracted the jagged fragment. It glittered, slick with her iridescent blood, in his palm. He tossed it aside and immediately applied a sealant patch from his kit. The cool, numbing gel spread through the wound, a blessed relief that made her dizzy. Her hand was still on his arm. She snatched it back as if burned. "Why?" she asked, the word raw. "Why not let it kill me? I am your enemy." Rylan sat back on his heels, cleaning his scalpel. He did not look at her. "We have enough enemies on this moon. The ground. The atmosphere. She had. For a fraction of a second, she had been struck by his stillness, by the unexpected humanity of his unhelmeted face. A tactical error, she muttered. Perhaps. He stood, offering a hand. She ignored it, pushing herself up using a tree. The leg held, stronger now. Don't expect gratitude. I expect nothing from you, Commander Kaelen, he said, and there was a profound weariness in the statement that resonated deep within her. Except, perhaps, the same professional detachment I am attempting to show. Our survival is a mutual objective. Let us treat it as a joint operation between temporarily allied forces. A joint operation. With the enemy. The concept was heretical. Yet, as the first tremors shook the ground, sending plumes of glowing gas erupting from fissures in the distance, heresy began to look like the only sane option. They found shelter as the moon's long night fell, a cavern formed by the collapsed ceiling of a subterranean river, now dry. The world outside became a hellscape of tremors, geysers of superheated steam, and an eerie, radioactive glow from the fractured crust. Inside, in the damp, mineral-scented dark, the space was uncomfortably intimate. Kaelen kept to one wall, methodically checking her few remaining weapons. Rylan tended to a small, portable heater, its faint orange glow the only light, painting his sharp features in warm relief and deep shadow. The silence stretched, filled with the distant groans of a dying world. It was a silence that pressed in, demanding confession. You called this the Varian way, Kaelen said suddenly, her voice loud in the quiet. To see only the Rylan fed a nutrient bar into the heater, the smell of proteins and algae filling the cave. It is a limitation. My people believe in context. In the cosmic equation. A soldier is not just a soldier. He is a product of history, of duty, of love for his homeworld. To reduce him to a target is to misunderstand the very war you are fighting. It makes killing easier, she said flatly. Does it? He looked at her, the heater's glow reflected in his eyes. Or does it just make the aftermath harder to bear? To dehumanize the enemy is to dehumanize the act of killing them. That cost is carried in the soul, not on a tactical report. Kaelen thought of the faces she had seen through her scope, moments before the pulse beam took them. The young Kythari recruit, wide-eyed with terror. The grizzled veteran who had smiled, as if welcoming the end. She had filed them away as targets neutralized. But at night, in the quiet of her bunk, they sometimes returned, not as soldiers, but as beings. We fight for the preservation of our way of life, she said, defensively. For the sapphire sun. Your empire seeks to extinguish it. And we fight because your sapphire sun's expansion threatens the core systems we have nurtured for millennia, he replied, not with anger, but with a tired certainty. We are two ancient giants, convinced of our own righteousness, stumbling through the dark and breaking everything we touch. Including this moon. Including each other. His words echoed her own secret thoughts, the doubts she drowned in discipline and duty. To hear them voiced by the enemy was profoundly disorienting. You sound like you doubt your cause, Commander, she challenged. But I am increasingly unsure if I am killing for them, or for the politicians and generals who have forgotten the taste of fear, the weight of a corpse. He used her name. Not her title, not Varian. Just Kaelen. It felt like a breach, an intimacy more shocking than if he had touched her. You should not speak such treason to me, she whispered. Who will you tell? A ghost of a smile touched his lips, devoid of humor. We are the last two souls in a collapsing universe. Here, there is no treason. There is only truth. He passed her half of the warmed nutrient bar. Their fingers brushed. A simple, accidental contact. Yet a jolt, like static discharge, passed between them. She saw his pupils dilate, saw his breath catch. He felt it too. This dangerous, impossible current. They ate in silence again, but the quality of it had changed. The space between them was no longer just empty air, it was a charged field, tense with unspoken words and the terrifying recognition of a mirror soul. On the third day, they were ambushed, not by soldiers, but by the moon itself. A section of the canyon they were traversing gave way in a cataclysm of grinding rock and dust. Rylan, who was a step ahead, shouted a warning and spun, shoving Kaelen back with shocking force just as the ground beneath him disappeared. She scrambled to the new edge, heart hammering against her ribs. He dangled 10 meters below, his grip precarious on a jagged outcrop. Below him, a river of molten rock churned and hissed, its heat washing up in sickening waves. Rylan. His name tore from her, raw and desperate. He looked up, his face strained. Go. The path on your side is stable. Reach the evac point. For 3 days, they had been allies of convenience. She had told herself she would abandon him the moment it was strategic to do so. This was that moment. He was the enemy. His death would be one less Kythari commander to fight her people. She saw his acceptance of that logic in his eyes. He was ready to fall. Kaelen moved. She uncoiled the high-tensile cable from her own utility belt, anchored it to a sturdy rock formation, and rappelled over the edge without a second thought. She slid down to his level, bracing her boots against the cliff face. "What are you doing?" he yelled over the roar of the magma. "Shut up and take my hand," she shouted back. Their hands clasped, armored glove against armored glove. His grip was like iron. She activated the winch, and it whined in protest, hauling them both up, straining against their combined weight. For a terrifying second, it slipped. He swung, and she was pulled halfway over the edge. Their bodies slammed together against the rock face, chest to chest, helmet to helmet. She could feel the frantic beat of his heart, or maybe it was her own. Their faces were inches apart, breath mingling in the hot, sulphurous air. In his wide amber eyes, she saw not fear, but awe. Together, they scrambled over the ledge and lay gasping on solid ground, safe from the abyss. Rolling onto her side, she found him already looking at her. The professional detachment was gone, burned away by the shared brush with annihilation. What remained was something naked, vulnerable, and fiercely intense. "You saved me," he said, voice thick with disbelief. "You saved me first," she breathed. On the ridge. A long, trembling moment passed. The war, their empires, their oaths of hatred, all of it receded, meaningless noise against the deafening truth of what was happening in this space between them. Slowly, he reached up. With a touch so gentle it made her ache, he brushed a smudge of ash from her cheekbone, his fingertips tracing the line of her facial markings, the sapphire tattoos that denoted her rank and clan. She should have broken his wrist. She should have thrown him back into the chasm. Instead, she leaned into that touch, her eyes fluttering closed for a perilous second. When she opened them, a tear she did not permit traced a clean line through the grime on her face. The wall was gone. The battlefield had shifted irrevocably. They were no longer commander and commander. They were Rylan and Kaelen, and they were falling in love in the heart of a ruin. The western evac point was a graveyard of broken machinery and silent panic. They found one functional, old-generation escape pod, its systems barely online, capable of a short jump to the system's Lagrange point where fleets might still linger. As they worked side by side to reroute power, a new understanding flowed between them. Words were sparse, but looks were voluminous. A shared tool passed from his hand to hers. His shoulder brushing hers as they peered into the same console. The silence was no longer filled with hatred, but with a profound, terrifying tenderness. Finally, the pod's engines hummed to life. They stood before the open hatch, the interior lights casting a sterile glow. This was the threshold. Once inside, they would be leaving this purgatorial moon and returning to their respective heavens. To the war. They will court-martial you for consorting with the enemy, Rylan said quietly, not looking at her. If they even believe your story. And you will be branded a traitor for not killing me, Kaelen replied, her throat tight. He finally turned to her. The calm commander was gone. In his place was a man stripped raw by an emotion more devastating than any plasma blast. Kaelen, her name was a prayer on his lips. I know, she whispered. Because she did. She felt it, the same desperate, impossible longing. The love that had grown in the dark, fed by shared survival and the revelation of a kindred spirit behind the enemy's eyes. He cupped her face, his touch both fierce and reverent. This war is a madness. But this, you, are the only real thing I have touched in a decade of fighting. She turned her face into his palm, pressing a kiss against his scarred skin. It was an answer. A surrender. A promise. Their first kiss was not gentle. It was a collision of stored-up longing, of fear, of defiance. It tasted of ash and desperation and a hope so fragile it threatened to shatter them both. Her arms wound around his neck, his around her waist, pulling her flush against him. In that kiss, empires fell. Battles ceased. There was only the frantic beating of two hearts that had found their counter-rhythm in the most forbidden of places. When they parted, foreheads resting together, both were breathing raggedly. What do we do? She asked, the question echoing in the hollow of her soul. We survive, he said, his voice firm now, resolved. We return. And we find a way to end this. Not as Kythari and Varian. But as us. It was a naive dream. A suicidal one. But as they boarded the pod, their hands linked, it was the only dream they had. Reality was a sledgehammer. The pod's weak signal was picked up by a Varian patrol frigate. Kaelen was extracted, hailed as a hero who had survived against all odds. Her story, of evading the enemy, of enduring the moon's collapse, was accepted, even celebrated. Rylan, using a stealth protocol on the pod, ejected in a lifeboat just before capture, his signal vanishing into the cosmic noise. He returned to the Kythari fleet, a commander resurrected. They were planets apart, light-years distant, thrust back into their roles. But the bridge between them was built, and across it pulsed a constant, agonizing signal. Through encrypted, untraceable data streams, using battlefield ciphers and dead-drop satellites, they communicated. Not as lovers, there were no more kisses, no touches, but as conspirators for peace. The weight of my uniform has tripled, he wrote once. I see your face in every star map, hear your voice in the static between jumps. My senior staff discusses the Vor threat, and I must sit and nod, while my soul screams that you are the only thing worth preserving. My warriors train to kill Kythari, she responded. I drill them, and all I can think is that I am teaching them how to murder the man I love. Every order I give feels like a betrayal. Of them. Of you. Of myself. Their secret war within the war began. She would subtly misdirect a strike, saving a Kythari outpost she knew was lightly defended. He would fail to intercept a Varian medical convoy. They were playing a dangerous game, weaving a fragile thread of mercy into the brutal tapestry of the conflict, each act a silent testament to their bond. But the galaxy was not kind to fragile threads. The flashpoint was the Tiberian Nebula, a strategic choke point. Both empires committed their full might. It was to be the decisive battle. Kaelen stood on the command bridge of the Varian cruiser Solar Razor, her sapphire armor polished to a cold gleam, her face a mask of imperial discipline. On the main view screen, the Kythari battle fleet coalesced out of warp, a swarm of angular, deadly shadows against the nebula's luminous gas. And there, at the head of the enemy's formation, was his ship. The Cauldron's Resolve. She knew its signature, its tactical profile. She had studied it in. The battle erupted in silent, spectacular violence. Beams of lethal energy cut through the dark. Fighters swarmed and died like sparks. Ships bloomed into brief, terrible suns. Kaelen commanded with a cold efficiency that was legendary, her voice never shaking, even as her heart shattered with every Kythari ship that died by her order. Then, the catastrophic moment. A lucky shot from a Kythari bomber crippled the Solar Razor's primary engines. They were adrift, a dying whale amidst the sharks. And the Cauldron's resolve broke from the main engagement, moving in for the kill. On her bridge, alarms wailed. "Commander, the enemy flagship is on an intercept course. They're locking tactical weapons." Kaelen stared at the approaching vessel. This was it. He would be the one to do it. Duty would finally claim them both. She felt a strange peace. To die by his hand, even if he never knew it was her ship, was a perverse kind of poetry. A priority communication channel lit up on her private console. Encrypted with a cipher only 2 people in the galaxy knew. She opened it. His face filled her screen. He was on his own bridge, the glow of tactical readouts reflecting in his wide, agonized eyes. The calm commander was gone. He looked ravaged. Kaelen. Her name, in his voice, in the middle of the hellfire. It was the most devastating sound she had ever heard. "My duty died on Xylos," he cried, a raw, unrestrained sound that made his own bridge crew turn in shock. "My loyalty is to you. To the future we whispered about in the dark." He leaned closer to the screen, his voice dropping to a desperate, passionate rush. "I am transmitting a data packet. Every war crime, every hidden agenda, every secret that both our high commands have buried. Broadcast it. On all frequencies. To both fleets. It's the only thing that might stop this. They'll execute you for treason. Let them." His gaze softened, pouring into her across the vast, violent gulf. "I love you, Kaelen Vor. I love you more than my empire, more than my life. If this is my last act, let it be for you. For us." The transmission ended. The data packet arrived. It was colossal, damning, a history of the war written not in heroism, but in greed, lies, and pointless sacrifice. Kaelen stood. Her officers looked to her, awaiting the final order. "Communications officer," she said, her voice ringing with a new, unshakable authority. "No," she whispered. Then, shouting, "Helm. Emergency thrust. Put us between those ships and the Resolve. Commander, we have no engines. Use maneuvering jets. Now." The Solar Razor, a behemoth on its deathbed, lurched sideways, a final, groaning effort. It placed its crippled hull directly in the path of the internal security vessels, shielding the Cauldron's resolve. The security ships opened fire, not on the Resolve, but on her. The Solar Razor shuddered under the impacts. Bulkheads exploded. Kaelen was thrown to the deck. As the lights failed and the air grew thin, her final sight on the main viewer was of the Cauldron's resolve, safe, holding its position. And then, a new ship, a Varian destroyer, moved to intercept the security vessels, its captain seemingly inspired by her act of defiance. The last thing she felt was not fear, but a profound, aching love. She had chosen. She had saved him. The battlefield of her heart had finally, decisively, won. She woke to the smell of antiseptic and the soft, artificial glow of a medical bay. Not on a Varian ship. The architecture was different, angular, efficient, Kythari. He was there. Sitting beside her cot, his head in his hands. He wore simple gray fatigues, stripped of all rank insignia. A prisoner. When he heard her stir, he looked up. His face was gaunt, etched with new lines of grief and sleepless nights, but his eyes blazed with a light that pushed back the shadows of the galaxy. "You're alive," he rasped, reaching for her hand. His touch was the only anchor in a spinning world. "You're a traitor," she murmured, her voice weak. "So are you." A faint, weary smile touched his lips. "Your broadcast, it worked. Not completely. Not instantly. But it broke the spell. There's a ceasefire. Talks. The fleets are standing down, licking their wounds and trying to process the truth. And us?" His hand tightened around hers. "The Varian Empire has disavowed you. You are considered a martyr, officially. But to their intelligence, a defector. The Kythari High Command wants me executed. But the political officer on my ship, he saw what you did. He mutinied against the security vessels. There are others, on both sides, who are tired. They see us not as traitors, but as catalysts." He took a deep breath. "There is a planet. In the neutral zones. Rugged, remote. It has no strategic value. It's just a place. A group from both sides, those who question, are forming a community there. To build something new. Away from the flags and the fanfare." He looked at her, his soul in his eyes. "Come with me. Not as a Varian or a Kythari. Just as Kaelen. With me." She thought of the sapphire sun, of the weight of her armor, of the cold discipline that had been her entire life. It felt like a memory from someone else's story. The only thing that felt real was the warmth of his hand in hers, the love that had grown in the ruins of a war they no longer believed in. She had no empire. No title. No army. All she had was this, a choice, and the man she loved. She lifted their joined hands to her lips, pressing a kiss to his knuckles. "Yes," she said. The planet was called Evam. It had 2 suns, one gold, one a gentle blue, that set in a cascade of violet and rose. Their home was a simple structure of local stone and salvaged ship metal, overlooking a valley where strange, luminous flora swayed in the wind. They stood on the porch, watching the double sunset. Kaelen wore a simple tunic, her sapphire tattoos the only remnant of her old life. Rylan's arm was around her waist, her head resting on his shoulder. Down in the valley, they could see the lights of the nascent settlement flickering on. Former Varian engineers worked alongside former Kythari agriculturists. Children of both species played in the long grass, their laughter carrying on the thin air. The war was not over. The ceasefire was fragile. But here, on this forgotten world, a new equation was being written. Not of empire versus empire, but of person beside person. "Do you regret it?" Rylan asked softly, his voice rumbling in his chest beneath her ear. "The choice? The cost?" Kaelen looked up at him, at the man who had been her enemy, her savior, her conspirator, her love. In his twilight eyes, she saw the reflection of the sapphire sunset, and her own face, finally at peace. "I regret nothing," she said. "I fought the greatest war of my life on that moon, Rylan. And I won. I won you." He kissed her then, under the alien sky, a kiss that was a promise, a peace treaty, and a forever. It was slow, deep, and filled with the quiet, unshakable certainty of a love that had turned the tide of stars. The real war had been in their hearts. And love, against all odds, had been the only victor.